Welcome to RLF Radio, the only show that helps young baseball players and their parents prepare for high school athletics and beyond. Brought to you by the Ryan Lemon Foundation with your hosts, Dick Owens, Guy Lemon.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Guy Lemon with the Ryan Lemon Foundation, and my co-host this afternoon is the inimitable Dick Owens.
Inimitable, I like that a lot. That's a good.
Not sure what it means.
Me neither. I'm going to have to look it up before we leave. Thank you. This is great. We got a great guest today too. Everybody, stay tuned for this one.
We're fortunate enough to have coach, but more importantly, or at least more significantly, player Ben Orloff. If those of you that are local fans will recognize Ben as one of the stars of the UCI team as they started their program back. Ben, thanks a lot for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I know, and just as we've been able to chat a little bit, and I live in Irvine, have for a long time, and so followed the program. Just a little background on your playing side. When I know that UCI had stopped for a long time, and then it came back on, were you one of the first teams, or had the school been playing for a few years before you came onto the campus?
No, the program came back in 2002. Coach Savage brought it back, and they got really good really quick. In their third year ever, they made it to the postseason. My first year was 2006, and then 2007 was the year that we won our first playoff game at the Division I level ever.
Pretty fun. And where high school? What high school did you play?
Simi Valley.
Simi Valley, so local. Because I know one of the things we want to get into is the recruiting process, the differences between Division I, Division II, Division III, and you can give us a great perspective not only as a player, the process that you experienced as a recruit back then, and certainly I know that rules, and you would know it better than I, that NC2A recruiting rules and playing rules and practicing rules have changed. But tell us a little bit about, I see you've gotten a lot of awards, an All-American, Big West Player of the Year, and the Brooks Wallace Award. What is that? What's the background to that one?
That year that I got it was the first year that they changed it to a shortstop award, and so Brooks Wallace was a shortstop. He played at Texas Tech. The award's in his honor. His family's out there at the ceremony, and so that year was the first year that they started giving it to who they deemed the best college shortstop in the country.
Wow.
Big time.
That's a big-time deal. Shortstop, I mean, beyond the starting pitcher, I would think that people view shortstop, well, there's pitcher, catcher's pretty important, but the catcher, the behind the dish doesn't get much notoriety. Shortstop is the guy that gets the most notoriety. They get the most balls in the day. That's a heck of an accomplishment. Was the award given in Omaha?
No, it was in Lubbock.
Right, where he was from.
Yeah. So it's in Lubbock, and they're building the College Baseball Hall of Fame there. And Barry Larkin was the presenter, and so it's pretty cool.
That's my gosh. What year did you get that award?
That was 2009. And so the other guys getting awards at that time were Steven Strasburg, Mike Leake, right. Dustin Ackley. So there was one guy that didn't belong. Three.
Well, if we got autographs from all those guys.
Yeah.
At the very least. And tell us about after your college days. How many years did you play professionally? What was that process like? When did you get drafted, and how long did you play professionally?
So I got drafted in the 9th round my senior year by the Houston Astros. Played through the middle of the 2013 season. So I played in the Penn League in Troy, New York. I played in the South Atlantic League in Lexington. Played half a season in Lancaster in the California League, and then a season and a half in the Texas League in Corpus Christi. So
I hate to ask the bad news, the circumstances by which somebody said, we need your uniform back, was it injuries? Was it just a realization by them that you weren't going to get a chance to get to the big leagues? What were those final that final season like for you? Was it injuries or
no? I actually quit. I was having a pretty good year and was playing. Wasn't one of the first, second, third round type guys. So my role had kind of started to diminish.
Oh, right, because there's younger guys coming up.
Yeah. Some of those guys that are Delino to Shield, some of these other guys that are in the big leagues now are guys that were going up that needed to play. And so Coach Gillespie kind of approached me about this opportunity about coming back to coach. And so
Coach Gillespie's the head coach at UCI.
Correct, yeah, sorry.
And had been the head coach at USC for many, many years.
Yeah, a long time. And so he actually approached me halfway through the year about, he had an opening, would I be interested in coming back? And so I actually, was fortunate enough to be able to quit and go and have a job, something that I wanted to do right now.
Wow, a neat process.
That's fantastic.
So you bring to the UCI program, I would think, a unique perspective given your success at their school and your success professionally. I can't imagine that happens very often, even at the Division I level, where guys are an alumni and then had a great professional experience.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, we, actually everybody else on our staff besides Coach Gillespie all went to school at Irvine, played at Irvine, graduated from Irvine.
Really?
Yeah.
I have to believe that's unique at the Division I level to have that many alum. Am I just off base on that?
No, it's probably more uncommon than common. I think one of the guys that you do hear about is Josh Holliday at Oklahoma State, who played at Oklahoma State for his dad, came back and took that job, and has done a really good job there.
Is there many guys that played like him, like Josh did, that played at their school and now head coach at the school? Doesn't seem like there's that many. I would think it's probably not.
Yeah, I don't think it's a ton in our sport. I think it's more, like I said, I think it's more uncommon than common. You're seeing Jim Harbaugh do it at Michigan.
Right.
Well, and I would think, okay, if I'm a player or a prospective player and I'm trying to figure out which school do I want to go to, and if I'm being considered at UCI, I'm probably being considered at several Division I schools. I would think you guys can provide a player a really accurate and unique sense of here's what it's going to be like at this school. I would think that gives you a recruiting advantage in terms of getting kids that you know when they come, they're really committed. I don't mean in a signature sense, but in the emotional sense. I would imagine you have guys that stay and like the experience because they know what they're getting into.
Yeah, we like to think so, and I think it does help us in the recruiting process in terms of selling UC Irvine because we lived it, we went to those classes, we played, and so it's not talking to a kid in a family of this is what I think is going to happen. It's like, no, we did this. This is what it's going to look like. This is what the weight room looks like. So it makes it easier to sell that, and definitely I think, in terms of getting them committed as in all in to be excited to go to your schools, telling them exactly what it's going to be like and, what they can expect once they show up.
Well, I know it's a nice yard there that they finally developed as they tore out and put in the new one. Has Coach Gillespie, has he been the head coach from when you first started back in 06?
No, so I played for Coach Dave Serrano for 2 years.
Serrano, right.
And then he left and took that job at Fullerton and then on to Tennessee. And so I played 2 years for Coach Serrano and then 2 years for Coach Gillespie. I
remember, was it one of those 2 years that you guys went to the World Series with Serrano?
2007, Coach Serrano's last year.
Yeah. I remember having a chance, and this interview is not about me, but I remember Serrano describing, because that year, that was at the old Rosenblatt Stadium, right?
That's right.
And I know Dave had maybe you could share a little bit of that experience. I know Dave told me, and I won't tell the story, but Dave, by his background at Fullerton, had been to Rosenblatt many times, and anybody that knows college baseball know Rosenblatt is the Holy Grail. Omaha is the Holy Grail, but I remember, describe that experience driving up that first time. Dave gave it to me in great length, but it gave me chills as he was describing it. Describe what you remember of that drive up the very first time.
Yeah, I remember, just getting there, and we're driving up there for our practice day, and it's at the top of the hill, and Coach Serrano made us all close our eyes.
That's what he told me.
Yeah, until we see the ballpark, and then he said, open your eyes, your college dreams have come true, and then you see Rosenblatt, and it's pretty cool.
No, because he kind of elevated it to almost it was a semi-religious experience because of the. And I've never seen. Yeah. I've been to the new Omaha Stadium, and it's nice, but it's like every other, large minor league stadium. But I heard Rosenblatt just had everything about such a unique kind of an old, tired wooden facility. And didn't you guys get a police escort into town?
Yeah, it's pretty special. And you get on the field, and you see the seats in the outfield, and you start playing through your head, all the games that you've seen on TV.
Yeah,
him and the rest of his staff.
Right.
I remember I was with Sergio Brown at our practice day, and we were standing in the dugout, and he was on one of those Fullerton teams in the 90s, and he's like, I was standing right here when Mark Kotze hit this home run. And so the tradition of that place is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. No, right. Yeah, I know there was quite the controversy when they moved it over to the new stadium, and it is a nice facility. I've been to the new one, but, it's one of those deals. Baseball is a throwback sport. I know there were a lot of people that wished that Rosenblatt was never removed, but I guess the NC2A said if you want to keep it in Omaha, you've got to elevate the circumstance. So have you guys made it back?
It's all about the big bucks, right?
Have you guys made it back as a coach? Have you made it back to Omaha?
Yeah, we went in 2014.
Right.
So it was cool to see TD Ameritrade, and it's TD Ameritrade's awesome. The facilities for the players underneath, the clubhouse, locker rooms, batting cages are all awesome.
So you could be one of the few guys that could relate Rosenblatt to the new stadium.
Yeah, pretty lucky. It's awesome, but you're right. It's a completely different field, and Rosenblatt's in the middle of that community, and people are tailgating in people's front yards. I think it's kind of like, Yankee Stadium, how they tore down the old Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built with all the tradition and the history, and then they built new Yankee Stadium. I think it's kind of the same thing.
Same thing.
Ameritrade, yeah.
Yeah, because the Ameritrade is sort of off by itself in an industrial area, where Rosenblatt, literally, it was
in the neighborhood. Like
there were
the old
front
days.
yards
Yep.
that were literally immediately across from the stadium.
Yep.
Well, tell us about UCI. What differentiates? Well, let me back up. Are you involved in recruiting? Are you the head of recruiting? What's your responsibilities as the associate head coach?
Yeah, I'm heavily involved in the recruiting and identifying the players and trying to get them to say yes and come to our school.
When does that process start? Do you look? I'm going to be silly here. I hope. Maybe I'm not.
These days, I don't think so.
I remember having a
Feeling
conversation
not.
with Coach Savage many years ago when we sat in the new stadium, and he was showing me. He had a folder, and he was describing how he would go look at 8th graders. When do you start trying to identify players?
Hey, it's definitely changed. I don't know about for the better, but it's definitely changed. I mean, guys are popping up on the radar in the 9th grade. Some schools, you can look across the country, and some schools are committing 9th graders, 10th graders, a lot of them. So you start.
Are those binding commitments?
No, just commitments, right?
Yeah. So it's all verbal until next week. Actually, will be a early signing period, and so you can't sign until November of your senior year. And so then once you sign, then that becomes a binding deal.
And at that point, the school is obligated to the player is obligated to that school. It's a unilateral sort of relationship.
Correct.
Right. So when do you start trying to track players? You or
like I said,
UCI?
We start identifying them in the 9th grade. We're not
freshmen
typically making offers to 9th graders, but you start hearing about kids and knowing who they are and start tracking them and seeing them. It's scary. It's scary because, you're trying to predict what these kids are going to be at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22.
Sure. I mean, a guy may be 5'7" and quick, but he's 5'7", and I mean, you're not a big guy, so you don't. That's the beauty. Well, of course, Altuve is a perfect example for the Astros.
Right.
He can be just a couple of clicks above a midget, and here he is, maybe the World Series MVP. The way the thing is playing out, but how do you do that process? Obviously, you project where a kid is physically. That's part of it, but you just keep tracking them. How often will you see a guy as a freshman?
Not a lot as a freshman. It's typically for us, more of that is just collecting names. Maybe if it's a local player, you'll go check on them. But I think that early in the process for us is just more collecting names, putting them in lists so that when they have a couple more birthdays, you go back in there and
see if they're progressing as you might have expected.
I mean, one thing that Ben does is that they come out to the Ryan Lemon League, right, in the fall and look at all the kids, and with that many kids out there, and there's some freshmen out there that are playing. If they're playing on fall right now, they're probably pretty decent. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, we'll put in a little plug for the Ryan Lemon
Why
Foundation.
not?
We have, as Ben knows, we have 24 teams playing in a varsity league, not more than about 5 minutes away from UCI Stadium at the Ryan Lemon Stadium. And then we also have our Futures League, which is freshman guys. Do you ever go out and see any of the freshman games?
I haven't gone out seen the Futures games.
But you do go see some of the varsity games there?
Yeah, we're out there a bunch during the week, and like I said, it's so local for us.
Sure, it's easy.
It's been home game for us.
Get a Subway sandwich and, hey, honey, I'll be home in an hour and see some guys.
Yeah, that's right. So that league's been awesome for us just in terms of, it's easy to access. You can see guys every week because that's what I think, is tough in the recruiting process is you can never see guys enough. And, you don't like to have to make a decision on a guy on one time or 2 times or 3 times. And so that league's enabled people to, go back every week and see a guy, multiple times.
Well, that's probably a good point. I'm a player. I'm worried about getting recruited. Do I worry about success in an individual game? Do I try and be the same every game? What would be your recommendation to a player if he hopes to be recruited in that regard? Worry about a single game?
Yeah, I mean, it's not all about the results. The people that are out there evaluating kids, it's about, how does the body look? How does the body work? What's the swing look like? How do the actions look on defense? So it's not always about if they get a hit or they don't get a hit, or they give up a hit on the mound or they strike a guy out. So it's more about, the process versus I got 2 hits today, I'm going to get a college scholarship.
Do you ever? I've always wondered as a dad. My son played a long time ago. I used to always think that pregame was a pretty good way to evaluate a kid's defensive capability. As much does he ever make a good hard throw, but just the way he carries himself. Do you put much stock in how a guy goes through the process of a pregame?
Yeah, I love infield outfield. I love pregame infield outfield. I think, to your point, I agree with you 100%. It's the best time to evaluate guys on defense. How do they catch the ball? How do they throw it? How do their feet work? Where you could watch a game or 2 games or 3 games, and if you're the shortstop or you're the third baseman, a ball might not get hit to you.
During the hour and a half that you're there.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So the pregame infield outfield becomes a big deal, and for those kids to treat it game like that. This might be your opportunity to, really show somebody, because outside of that, you're trying to evaluate the balls that get rolled to them between innings, or how the center fielder throws with the left fielder between innings. Because they might not have to make a throw in the game, and you're trying to make your evaluation on.
Well, so that's at least one tip. I know I always wonder when guys go out and do pre-games, because they do it so frequently, that I think some players say, it's pregame. And then other guys, I think, realize, no, this may be, as you point out, the only 4 balls I'm going to get where I can showcase my talent. And because as a scout, you try and get, as a recruiting guy, try and get to games in advance of the first pitch.
Yeah, almost all the guys at our level get to games early to try to watch guys, even before pregame, infield, outfield, watch them play catch, watch them stretch, and see as much as you can about a kid. And
see their demeanor.
Yeah, and even Coach Gillespie tells our guys all the time, we take pregame, infield, outfield every day. He says exactly what you said, that it's a chance for you to show off.
Right. Take it serious.
Yeah. I mean, it's the old adage, you never know who's watching, right? Although these days, I think every parent knows every college recruiter that comes through there.
What are the rules in terms of you guys being able to reach out to a player and say, hey, Johnny, I want you to come to our school, as opposed to I'm Johnny the player and I want to go to UCI? Are there NC2A rules that differentiate who can talk to who when?
Yeah, so now it's kind of changed in the last, 18 months. September 1st of a kid's junior year is the first time that we can initiate communication, that we can text them, we can call them. I guess some people maybe Instagram them or Twitter them. So September 1st, their junior year, is the first time that we can be the ones to initiate contact. Before that, all the contact has to be initiated from the kid or the parent. And if we miss the phone call, we're not allowed to call them back. If they text us, we can't text them back. So there's a lot of.
So it has to be right at the same time, and you have to be able to accept that call. Right?
Yeah, that's an interesting little thing. So if I'm a parent or a player and I'm not a junior, don't think because they don't get a return phone call that they're being blown off. It's that I know from 20 years ago, the rules of recruiting process are very, very different. What they used to be is irrelevant. It's what they are today, and there are very strict requirements of that communication process.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And if I'm a sophomore and I reach out to you and I call and you call me back or we talk, are you then allowed to have back and forth, or does every contact have to be initiated by the parent or player?
Yeah. If they're a freshman or sophomore, every communication has to be initiated by them.
Let me. Good point right there. Should the parent be calling you?
Hey, we'd rather talk to the kids. I think.
I would think.
I think once the recruiting process starts getting serious, I think it's important for the family to play a role in that. And I think it's important for them to have communication. But I think the kids are going to be the ones that, when they get to college, dealing with the coaches on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's a good practice for them on being adults and learning how to talk to adults and that sort of stuff.
What about grades and that sort of thing? What are the standards? I imagine at UCI, it's pretty high standards. If I'm a player, SATs, ACTs, grade point average, where are you kind of in terms of minimums and averages that you look for in terms of a young man's academic process?
Hey, we always tell guys they got to do the best they can. We don't have hard numbers that you have to hit this. There's a lot that goes into the admissions process besides test scores, GPA. Test scores, GPA are obviously really, really important. And so I think for wherever a kid's going to go to take care of business in the classroom, to not limit yourself on schools that you might be able to attend based on your performance in the classroom.
Now, if I go to UCI, can I get academic money as well as if you guys give me a little bit of money as well?
Our school typically we don't have that academic money because with it being a public school.
Okay.
Typically the schools with the academic money, or the more private institutions, have more access to that academic money.
Right.
So I know the rules have changed there. You've got, when the roster starts in mid-January, how many guys will be on the team traveling?
Well, at the Division I level, you're allowed to have 35 players on your roster. We have the dollar equivalent of 11.7 scholarships for that roster. And then this year, as in the last couple of years, you're only allowed to have 27 of those 35 players on scholarship.
And is there a maximum? If I'm a pitcher that throws 99 miles an hour and every pitch is a strike, so I'm the perfect player, is there a limit as to how much money as a percentage of the total package, or can I get 100% scholarship if I'm that good?
If you say you won't get drafted and sign, we'll give you 100%. So you can get up to 100% in our sport, and the smallest scholarship that you can get is 25% if you're on scholarship.
Oh, I see. Because I had thought
there's only 11.7, right? So it's not a lot of money divvied up between 27 guys now, right? Instead of 35.
Yeah, so you can't pass out too many 100%. Right. But it's not like, the basketballs, the footballs, you can only offer 100%.
Right.
Oh, that's an important. So how many guys, without getting into percentages, so you said maximum number of people that can get money is 25. 27. How many players, and if the minimum is, I got to do the math here, I'm a bean counter at heart. So if the minimum is 25%, how many players are getting some scholarship funds, would you guess, on this year's team?
I think it's going to be different with every school. I think typically...
Well, like at UCI this year, without getting into specifics, just 20 guys are getting money?
We'll have closer to 27 than 20. And part of that is just,
you like to spread it around.
Well, everybody's, our school costs less than some of the private schools.
Right.
And so typically the schools that cost less money don't have to offer as many 75, 85, 90% scholarships because the school in itself is more affordable.
Sure. Stanford is a different situation than whatever the least expensive.
Right.
Yeah, so I think some of the more expensive institutions typically are going to have less guys on scholarship because they have to offer
UC schools are going to be more expensive than the state schools.
Correct.
Right? So
Correct.
Fullerton and UCI are going to be different from a dollar standpoint of going there.
Yeah, it's interesting. You when you recruit, I guess it's obvious you're not just on physical talent, but it's the monetary obligation of mom and dad may love to come to UCI, but they can't afford it, and you guys can only offer 40%, and they can't make up the shortfall, and so it falls off their list, or on the reverse, they can't afford it, and so they'll consider it even more.
Yeah, that happens for sure.
So when this November, and it's coming up, you said in just a couple of
November
weeks?
8th.
November 8th, coming up.
Yeah.
Will you have finished your recruiting by November 15th when kids all sign, or do you hold out 3 or 4 scholarships until June? What's that process?
I think us, like everybody else, I think you recruit year round. You're constantly evaluating your roster and your needs. And then for us, we've only been in school for a month now, and so we're still the new players on campus, evaluating those guys, and your needs change. And then obviously in June, we're always going up against the draft, and so you're trying to predict out, your juniors, is he going to get drafted and signed? Is he going to be back for his senior year? Injuries always play a role in that. So I think you're recruiting year round, and you're never done until the guys all get to campus and school starts.
and how many will you sign this next week or so?
I don't know if we're
hopefully
talking about the initial numbers.
Well, I don't know about the numbers, but
it'll be a smaller class for us. It's typically about, for everybody,
right.
How many guys do you lose? How many guys do you have to bring in?
Right. So
I think
to get to that 35 number, right? So it might be this year, it might be 6 and 7, or next year
it could be 10 or 11.
Right. So
based on who do you lose and what do you need.
I know it's pretty rarefied air, and there's going to be very few listeners that this is relevant to, but it's always interesting. When you sign guys each year, say last year or the last 2 years, where Joey's coming to my school, he's committed, we've signed the documentation, and damn, I lose him to the draft. And as a graduating senior, he decides to sign professionally. Over the last 2 years, how many players have you lost to the draft as a senior in high school?
Just one.
Just one in the last 2 years. Because I would imagine there's a little bit of that balancing act, too, that you don't want to get a top first-round pick because in all likelihood, you may dedicate that number, but you lose him. So do you guys try and find that magic sweet spot to find a guy that's good enough but not necessarily going to take the pro draft money?
Yeah, I think it's a delicate act. Yeah, it's part of it. You're trying to get the best players possible. When you get some of the best players possible, you realize that the draft potentially could impact that, and hopefully you've tried to forecast out of, do we think we're going to lose this guy? Do we think we're going to get him? As time goes on, you kind of have a better feel in April, May, June than maybe you do this time of the year. But you're constantly, that's what makes this sport and recruiting this sport a little bit unique. You sign a guy in basketball or football. You sign a guy in football, he's going to your school for 3 years. Our sport, when you commit the top players, that's something you deal with.
Do you ever ever is the wrong word? Do you very often have junior college guys that come, or do you mostly rely on getting incoming freshmen?
We like the junior college players. I think if you look on our roster, I should be able to tell you. Can't tell you off the top of my head, but we have 6, 7, 8 junior college guys on our team. I think in our conference, you see a good amount of junior college guys in our conference, and I think the junior college route for a lot of kids is a really good route.
It's a good way to go, especially around here. I mean, this is as good a baseball as you'll find for junior colleges, that's for sure. No doubt about it.
So in the fall right now, tell me about not yours, but the team's fall experience. If I'm a player and I've been recruited and I'm committed to play UCI and I've now been in school for a month, what's my baseball time commitment? 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day?
So the NCAA right now, when we're in official practice, what we're in right now, they give us 20 hours a week. So we're allowed
coach interaction?
Yeah. And so we'll use about 4 of those in the weight room and about 16 of them on the field.
And how many weeks is that allowed?
So we started, it goes like 6 weeks in the fall. And so we started in the middle of October and we'll go until the Friday before Thanksgiving.
So that's a little bit longer. We were just, earlier we had talked with the Division III coach. You guys get a longer window of time. So there is a differentiation between Division I and Division III in terms of the player interaction that a coach has.
Yeah, that's right. But before that 20-hour segment, we were in an 8-hour segment where we were only allowed 2 hours a week of what they call skill instruction, beating around and coaching the players, and then the other 6 they could spend in the weight room or on the track or stuff like that.
On their own, or is the coach allowed to be there as well?
The coach could be there for those 8 hours.
And so if I'm a player and those are the minimum, is there an expectation to spend more time weightlifting, skill exercise beyond the coach-player thing? I mean, what's the typical, if you talk to a recruit, hey, Johnny, from September through December, how many hours a week should I expect to commit to some aspect of baseball?
I mean, once we get going right now, we typically practice Monday through Friday for 3 hours, Saturday for 2 or 3 hours. But we like to recruit guys that like to play baseball. I think everybody, wants guys that love to play, and a big piece of why these guys go to school is to play baseball. I mean, not to downplay the academic side, which is, of the utmost importance, but there's a lot of guys that stay after and hit, come early and hit, do that sort of stuff, on their own.
That's great. Question for you on I'm a parent, right, and I want to have my kid go to a D1 school, and I'm looking at UCI or looking at one of the other ones. I can contact you anytime, correct? And you can only answer during the period that's available. What happens after their junior year? In other words, you can talk to them, you can do whatever. Can they come to the campus and go to a camp? Is that, if my kid wants to do that, can he come to a camp? Is that what I would do?
Yeah. And so almost probably every school's got their camps that they run.
Right.
And I think the camps are a great deal for kids that come to these universities and get to play in front of the coaches, get to see the coaches interact with other players. So I think the college camps become a really good avenue for those kids.
And I think our sport's changing a little bit from the standpoint the parents are out there. It's all about getting scholarships. What is kind of your take as a head coach with what's going on with kids playing, starting at 8 years old, playing travel ball, playing every week, double headers on Saturday. In some cases, some of the kids are playing 3 games a day, which I find is just incredible. What's the take there? I mean, what do you think's going to happen?
I mean, you're definitely right. I think these kids are playing all year round, everywhere, and I think I think that that's important that we don't neglect the training and the improving your game, and a lot of that comes through practice, comes through hitting in the cage by yourself, comes from working out, comes from taking ground balls. That doesn't always come from the tournament that you play 6 games in 3 days in.
Right.
And so I think there's a balancing act, and kids too. I think it's good to be a kid. You don't have to play baseball every day at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. I think there's some value to be a kid and, obviously not let it impact what you do in school.
And I know typically you guys seem to, anyway, recruit a lot of athletes, not just the baseball player, but guys that play multiple sports. I mean, there's not a lot of those out there anymore. I might play maybe football and baseball, maybe basketball and baseball. Do you think that's important from a parent standpoint? Is my kid okay playing 2 sports? I want to get him down to just 1 sport in high school.
I mean, I think everybody likes the multi-sport athlete. When you can recruit kids that are athletes,
right.
You think they have the ability to learn, do multiple things. I think it's good to prevent that burnout. There comes a time probably where kids, choose 1 sport maybe, but I mean that's not a fear of a college coach is somebody's playing, they're too good of an athlete, they're playing too many sports.
Yeah, there's too many parents that think that they got to start right now. I'm in 8th grade and before that. I mean, I see kids now that think they're going to be drafted in the MLB at 8 years old, and parents are just, it's delusional. It's just amazing to me what's gone on. Typically, you guys play how many games?
56.
56, okay, and that's Division I pretty much across the board.
Yeah. And
then you guys have the regional, then super regional, and then on to the big show, right?
That's right.
Okay. And I think it's amazing. I mean, we sit out here, Big West is one of the best conferences probably in the country, no doubt. Great baseball. Southern California, we have great teams here, great athletes. You recruit pretty much out of Southern California. You recruit out of state. If I look at your roster right now, is there going to be any kid there from Texas or Georgia or Florida or New York or New Jersey or something, or not?
If you look at our roster right now, I think we're all California. And like what you said, there's a ton of really, really good players in California.
Right.
And so, we want to try to fish where the fish are, and to go and know who the good players are.
So you're not necessarily going out of state to go look for somebody, or not? I mean obviously you guys look.
Yeah, not generally, but I think anybody, if there's a player from wherever that you think can help you, I think anybody's going to go pursue them.
So if I'm from Oklahoma and I think UCI might be a fit for me, best thing to do is to just contact you. Do I send in? I mean, another big thing in recruiting these days, or at least it seems to be with the parents and so on, is I send you a tape, a highlight reel or whatever. Is that? Do you guys look at that? I mean, is that something that you really look at and go, yeah, this is really good?
Yeah,
it's done professionally or whatever it might be.
I think we all get those emails with the information and the videos,
right.
And I think the majority of people probably look at them. I think it might mean more coming from your high school coach, or coming from your travel ball coach, maybe more than from you and your mom and your dad. Maybe
right.
It's somebody
right.
that's a sponsor speaking in
right.
In your favor.
Right. So you guys look at that, and recruiting services are out there these days, trying to help athletes get into your school or whatever school it might be. Do you take credit in those? I mean, is that something you guys look for at some of these? Is there outfits one better than another, or you just kind of just take it with a grain of salt and you kind of know who's a little bit better than the others?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of all the above. I mean, if you're with this recruiting thing, it's so competitive that you're exploring all the avenues, and
right.
You're trying to find the good players, and they can come from wherever, and however you find them is good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're running out of time here, so I hate to do this. We're going to have to leave. I don't want to do it. Maybe we can get you back again at some point. Love to do that if you're willing to come back and are available. I know you're a busy guy. So the signing period, is November 7th. 8th is the date. Okay, so we'll be looking forward to that and see who UCI signs. Tell us how people can get a hold of you. If they want to get a hold of you, an email address that you could give them?
Yeah, it's BORLOFF@uci.edu.
And that'll get them directly to you, and you can answer them from there. And you can answer them this time of year now. You can answer
the rules allow.
If the rules allow,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And there's dead periods in that, and I'm sorry we haven't really gotten into some of those things, but there's a dead period now, or is it coming up?
Starting when that signing period starts.
And that signing period starts, right? And that's for how long?
It goes until March that we can't go off campus to recruit.
Right. So then after that, you can go back out and see players play. And typically through the summer, or not?
Yeah, it kind of goes. I mean, there's some gaps
in between, right?
From March until now.
Because NCAA throws, I think, a dart at a calendar and says, okay, this week I think we're going to have a dead period. I don't know. I haven't figured that one out yet. It changed so much. Ben, thank you so much for being here. This is fantastic, and we really appreciate you being here. For the people out there, you can get a hold of me at dick@ryanlemonfoundation.com. Look at our website, ryanlemonfoundation.com. Obviously, if you're listening to this, we're on iTunes, or you're listening it through our website, or you're listening through OC Talk Radio, which airs every Wednesday at 6 o'clock. So you can always listen to the podcast then and at your leisure anytime you want. If you have any questions on podcasts, people you'd like to hear from, questions you'd like answered, send it to me, and we'll certainly look it up next time that we're on the air. That's it for us today. Got it. We always say, keep swinging for the fences. Thank you, everybody.